Hi everyone and welcome back in the forest. So it's been a while since I've made my last building video, but that's totally on purpose. Because if I make a building video every second week, I will have a lot more time to get things done before I make a video about it. As is the case in this video, where I got to finish 3 major projects in the house that I will now show you. First of which was to seal the house off from beneath. But first I needed to insulate the floor under the gable walls so that I wouldn't get a thermal bridge here. And then I put up boards under every rafter. Their function is to later hold up the boards that will hold up the insulation. And hopefully also hold out mice and other rodents from my construction. It is also possible to get an anti-rodent metal net for this part of the construction. However, I chose to do it more traditionally. And also eco-friendly, by only using boards that are not treated with any kind of toxic chemicals. Many would maybe use plates for this part, but because plates have a lot of glue inside of them, I wouldn't want to pollute my property with the residue from the sawing. So instead I went with these roof boards with tongue and groove. But hand sawing what ended up being 450 boards for the floor was quite the challenge. Luckily, my friend Thomas swung by to help.
Så havde du din sidste.
Under min far var super engageret for biologi og sådan noget i sin ungdom. deres arbejdsløshed, det er selvfølgelig heller ikke så nemt.
Nej.
Der var det sådan...
Jeg er lidt spændt på kødet der. Det var jo baglov. Vildt kød og fisk. Så vil jeg aldrig spise andet kød.
Nå, altså... Du vil trods alt spise kartofler.
Thomas's great help meant that I could cut the last of the 450 boards before noon the next day. But at that time, my arm was pretty tired and reminded me of the days where I cut the rafters for the roof. So now I just needed to put them down really tight so that nothing larger than 5 millimeters can push itself through. Because some mice only need 6 to 7 millimeters to enter the house. And I wouldn't want to have them nesting in my floor. However, my wooden fiber insulation is treated with some salts that would make it pretty unbearable for a mouse to live there. But I don't want to take any chances with that. Better safe than sorry, I guess.
Det oplyses her til aften, at et enigt folketing har besluttet at bygge fast forbindelse til Anholt og Læsø. Forbindelsen skal bestå af en hængebro fra Grenaa til Anholt, og herfra en 5-sporet tunnel videre til Læsø. Ingen har tidligere hørt om planerne, og jeg sætter på Christiansborg, siger I aldrig har oplevet noget lignende. Formanden for kommunernes mandsforening, Aarhus-borgmesteren Simon Thorkildsen, mener, at beslutningen må være blevet presset igennem af københavnske politikere. Udelukkende med det forhold at forhindre, at Aarhus skulle få den næste bro. I en udtalelse fra Simon Thorkildsen hedder det: Jeg tager det her som et nyt udtryk for det sædvanlige københavneri. Aarhus burde, den største by, være det næste, der stod for tur til at få en bro. Og han fortsætter: Det her skal vi nok huske næste gang København er andet sted hen. Og vejret, det stormfulde vejr fortsætter, vi kan i nat.
Before I could seal off the floor completely, I needed to do something really important. And that was to lay down the sewer pipe that will drain the water away from the kitchen into the collector tank. Because pretty soon I'll need to lay down the floor in the house, so I'll need to have the pipe ready by then. And for it to be legal, I will need to have it approved by, well, it's not a plumber, but if I were to translate it directly from Danish, it would be the sewer master. I guess there comes a time in every man's life where he sits alone in his house and asks himself if he should open that half a gallon of lubricant that he bought. But I found that sunflower oil from the kitchen works just as fine, maybe even olive oil or soap. After having dug down the pipes in a small trench with a slope, I shoveled dirt around them for support, since the pressure of the water can tear the pipes apart. Oh yeah, and then I also made the pipe for the toilet in the bathroom. After a couple of days, I got a very special delivery. It was a bunch of old and extremely heavy beams that I ordered from an online second-hand hardware store. The beams will serve a very important both aesthetical and functional purpose in my new house. Because they will be the foundation for my 2 sleeping lofts. And indeed a very rustic one. And I guess they are the first indication of how the style will be in my new cabin. But the beams also have another function. Namely that they hold the 2 outer walls of the house together. So if you were to imagine that a heavy snow load could press the roof down and the walls outwards, it wouldn't be possible with these beams. And after the beams came up, I could finally start sealing off the south side of the house. Not forgetting to insulate the hidden corner, again so I won't get a thermal bridge. And no, it's not a problem that it gets a little water, because it is wooden fiber and a breathable building, so it will just dry up.
So I just wanted to make a quick remark on the design of my window frames, because in my last video some of you commented that I wasn't actually finished with the window frame because I needed to fortify it a bit more, build it more solidly. But I have actually chose not to do so. But I'll get back to that in a moment. Why? So the idea is that when you build a wall like this, especially around the windows, you want to channel the load from the roof away from the window so it doesn't press down and make this one bend, for instance. So what you want to do instead is that the weight is channeled out into these studs and then into the ground. And what I have seen in many American and Canadian builds is that you have like an extra beam here, and sometimes also like a beam here to channel the weight away, I think, but an extra beam here and then some additional supporting studs in the sides to channel that weight down to the ground. But I chose not to do that for several reasons. Like one, I've never really seen it here in Denmark that we built like that, and I might just be wrong because I'm not a professional, but I haven't seen it that much. But also because I have this very thick beam on top of the vertical ones, and I cannot imagine a scenario where the roof will get so heavy that this very thick beam will bend downwards. Instead, it will channel the weight out to these studs that are placed relatively near one another, so they will all take the load and channel it down to the ground. And these beams are also pretty heavy duty because they are C24, so it's a strength class that is fairly high because it's meant for building roofs where the pressure is more horizontal. But normally when you build a wall, you could do fine with just a C18, which is a less strong class of wood, but I chose to go with C24 because the dimensions were right for my type of wall. And also here in Denmark we don't get a whole lot of snow, and the roof is only a metal roof, so it's not particularly heavy. So I don't think it will ever be an issue with the weight load. But again, I'm not a professional, I might be wrong, but that's just my thoughts about this wall and why I chose to build it like this. I just realized how much I actually enjoy doing this, because it's like almost a meditative experience to sit and be working on this beam, thinking also about how old it is and what its history is, and now that it will become a part of my house and a new history. But also the fact that like it's working with hand tools, and even though I'm still learning to use this tool, I'm very much enjoying it, because it teaches me a very different way of working, where you are very attentive in the situation and you're very mindful, and you need to be like, sometimes you need to be a little rough and sometimes you need to be more gentle, and it's kind of like sculpturing, like almost like artwork, even though this is definitely not art. But it's just like, I like working like that, and that's one of the many reasons why I also like working with hand tools. A lot of people still on this channel ask me about that, why I do that. But first of all, it's obviously because I live off the grid, so I don't have that much power. But power tools, they're not very mindful. They're just doing their thing, and then they just mindlessly cut through a log or whatever. Like, and they are noisy, and it's not a very pleasant experience to work with most power tools. Actually, none of them, I guess, compared to like doing this kind of work. And in a way, I think it's kind of like also what's wrong with our modern society in many ways. It's this need for mass production, and we need to be so efficient in everything that we're doing. So we can't even understand when people do something inefficiently, because we're used to thinking so much in quantity, like how much can we produce and how fast can we do it, because time is money, like Benjamin Franklin said. But we totally ignore the qualitative aspect of work sometimes. And that is what I'm reminded of when doing this kind of work. So it's not only just because I'm in a lack of power, because I'm off-grid, it's also like a more aesthetic journey for me to return to this way of working and living, really. So, but anyways, I need to get this done, because I want to have the 3 beams for the other sleeping loft up before nightfall. So paradoxically, I'm actually in a bit of a hurry. Okay, so what just happened was one of the, luckily, very few building accidents that I've had here on the site, and maybe also karma hitting my arm. But because I was a little bit too tired, I unknowingly cut the beam a little too short. So when I was dragging it into position, I thought that I had a way more leeway at the other end, but I didn't. So it fell out of its socket and then onto my arm and down on the floor, and actually also hit the sewer pipe in the kitchen. But luckily neither my arm or the sewer pipe or the floor were damaged. I will get a bruise, I can feel that, but it's nothing, nothing big. So, but it is what you fear when you work like alone like this, that something will happen. So you really need to not work when you're tired, and you really need to be well rested. Especially when you're dealing with heavy-duty logs or beams like this. And it's actually kind of seldom that you work with building materials of these dimensions, because they are pretty old school in a way. This is like 10 centimeters by 22.5 centimeters. And so it's a fairly big log. And not only that, it's also very dense because it's old wood. Because back in the day you made building materials out of wood that had grown at a slower pace than the wood we use today, which means that the annual rings in the wood are closer to one another, which indicates that the wood has a higher density and therefore weight. So yeah, I'm not used to working with wood that is so heavy, and like I think these beams are like, they must be like at least 80 kilos per beam after I cut them down to size. Yeah, but I'm not too sure about that. But anyways, I like working with these old building materials because not only because they have this history to them, but also because it's secondhand. So it means that a tree somewhere in the world does not have to be taken down because I can use this one. So in a way, I'm not stimulating the demand for cutting down more trees if I can use more reused wood. So I will try to do that as much as possible in this build. Sometimes it is a little bit difficult to get a hold of the right building materials for your project, but luckily here in Denmark we have gotten more and more second-hand hardware stores. Yeah, but even though these building materials are very old, I think that they should be part of the building paradigm for tomorrow, I would say, because the construction sector is just one of the most energy demanding parts of our economy. So that is definitely one of the sectors where we could make some very significant changes in the way that we try to transition into a more sustainable society, I guess.
So that was all I had for now. Thank you so much for watching. And also a special thanks to all of you who chose to answer my question about how I could make better building videos in the future. It just gave me a ton of ideas and inspiration, some of which I've already tested out in this video. So thank you so much for now, and I'll see you again next week.